Congress has a duty to help. As I've said before, it's never too late to do the right thing.
Tragedy like Hurricane Sandy shouldn't be used as an excuse for a grab bag of spending having nothing to do with emergency relief.
Opponents of the legislation who claim that the bill is riddled with so-called pork and unnecessary provisions are just plain wrong.
I want this money to go where it is so desperately needed. But the time has come and gone in this nation when we can walk in here one day and spend $9 or $17 or $60 billion and not think about who's paying for it.
You've never had a situation where disaster relief has been then attached to a compensatory cuts in the rest of the budget.
Right. That's a fair point that they make, is that to tie all of this together has not happened before. It didn't happen in Katrina. It didn't happen in other storms. And there wasn't a concern in all of these other storms about the level of pork in any of those bills.
Look, all of that is true. But I think there was an obvious compromise here. Yes, this would be the first time that you'd have an offset, and thus it would look unfair. So why don't we agree that in this particular case there will be no offset, but from now on, because before we were not $16 trillion in debt, and we are now. Before we had a AAA rating, and now we don't. Before we didn't see what was happening in Europe and what's going to happen to the United States, and now we do. Circumstances are different. So yes, you don't want to be tough or too tough on the Sandy victims, but why not have a provision in the law that from now on, all emergency spending will be offset. That way, people will not feel in the Northeast that they were picked on, and will begin to be in some way responsible. And when Juan says that a cut of 1.5 cents on the dollar is doing away with discretionary spending, you get a sense of how completely out of control we are. This isn't even about cutting spending, which Obama and the Democrats won't even think about. This is about adding on spending wantonly.
If congressional Republicans refuse to pay America's bills on time, Social Security checks and veterans benefits will be delayed. We might not be able to pay our troops or honor our contracts with small business owners.
Whether it's Social Security checks or veterans benefits or disability benefits, it's pretty clear that the effect will be significant. And so, no, we can't guarantee if there were a default, any specific bill will be paid.
If we keep spending like this, we're going to have a president in a few years who's going to stand up and say that we are unable to pay Social Security or the military or benefits, and not because of a self-imposed crisis on a debt ceiling, but because we will be out of money. And that's what the Republicans are trying to avert. The president is playing this like a real demagogue and pretending that we do not have a debt issue. We do. That's what's hanging above us, and that's what will destroy our credit rating in the end. Not a crisis that we create and then get around as we have in the past, but a real one of a country that cannot pay its debts anymore, which is where we're headed.
Mali has been taken over, the northern part of Mali, by al-Qaeda type individuals. We want to make sure that we're seeing progress throughout the Middle East, with Mali now having North Mali taken over by al-Qaeda, with Syria having Assad continuing to assassinate, to kill, to murder his own people. This is a region in tumult.
I think people do not realize the degree to which the French never really gave up their empire in Africa. The British left, the Portuguese left, the Belgians left, and the French ostensibly granted independence in the 60s, but these countries, about a dozen of them, have French as the official language, and a lot of them have garrisons. Just this week, when the French attacked, they launched attacks against the Islamic rebels who were about to march on the capital. They were able to have assets because Chad, which is to the east, had the French aircraft, and Senegal on the west, again an ex-French colony, had a garrison of French troops who went into Mali. So the French look at this the way that we used to look at Latin America. as a kind of a Monroe Doctrine. They will not allow others, particularly Islamists, to take over. It's near Europe. It is a threat. It's Afghanistan without the mountains. And that's why I think what's happening is as it should. The French are taking the lead. We were dallying for weeks about organizing a force of Africans, which would have begun in the fall. All this is happening rapidly. But what we ought to do is not send any troops, but we should be giving as much logistic support as we can. There's a report in the Times that we are thinking about whether we should give capacity of the French airplanes to refuel. I think it's a gimme. Of course we should do that. It's a country that matters, and we can't allow a new al-Qaeda country in the middle of Africa.
This has been a Sunfish production.